What's going on, everybody? Welcome up to another edition of the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today we have a very, very good guest in the building, the one and only Dr. Kevin Newman, Superintendent of Manassas City Public Schools, an outstanding leader. He's become a friend of mine, somebody I love talking life, sports, and education with. Sports, remember that, people watching, because we always have interesting conversation as a debate we may touch on later. But Vicktory Life is honored to have you in the, on this spotlight, Dr. Newman. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, man. You coming into my life, not just in the life of Manassas City Public Schools last year has just been a blessing for me. Getting to know about you, all brought together by Big D, Derek Smith. It's just been a blessing to get to know you, and I'm honored to be here tonight. Been watching all the episodes and just seeing how small this world is, because you had Roniel Whitaker on, and then we talked about that story from when I took some kids to spring practice, and Roniel staying after practice and playing with the kids and getting to see a different side of him. And then when I'm watching the episode with him on, he talked about the two sides of Roniel. And I was like, man, that just hit home, because what I saw on TV and what I thought I was going to see when I got to Blacksburg for that practice, and what actually happened with him, Andre Davis, and a linebacker from Southwest Virginia. It may have been more, but I was so impressed with Roniel Whitaker because I didn't expect that. And then watching him on your show and hearing his story, man, I wish I could meet that brother, because it just made an impact. And just goes to show that you can't take glimpses of people and try to think of what you believe they will be. Get to know people, and that's a story that we had talked about before.
Yeah, and tonight we're going to get to know you. And a lot of people that know of you, they know you as one person as far as your profession as superintendent, but you've worn many hats in the educational and school system as well as the athletic realm, which you, Derek Smith, assistant principal at Osborne High School, and myself love to talk about when we're not talking about how to help the youth and their families. We'll dive into your athletic career in a second, but you mentioned, just watching the podcast and the things I do on my Legacy Spotlight. This is your Legacy Spotlight. And I want to take it back in the day. I want to go back to before you became Dr. Newman, member of Omega Psi Phi, quarterback, leader of Manassas City Public Schools. I want to know about where you're from and what it was like growing up. Everyone knows when you meet me, whether you follow me on Twitter, Facebook, I make it known where I'm from. But being from whatever part of VA or whatever area you grew up in, we all have pride. Let's talk about your childhood. How were you raised? Who raised you, and where are you from?
So I'm from a small town, Colonial Beach, Virginia. Very proud to be from Colonial Beach. I was raised by my mother. My father was in and out of my life. He dealt with his demons, mostly alcohol. And he was from the Maryland area. My mom and my Aunt May, you never believe this, Vic, they have never not lived in a house together.
Wait a minute, say it again. They have never what?
They have never not lived in the same house. So I was raised by a single mom, and I know everyone would say this, and I feel my mom is the best mom ever for what she did for me. She went from working in a factory called Keller's in Bowling Green to being an elementary custodian, to a custodian at a nursing home. And actually, she just retired last month. So she's able to be at home now and relax. She put in a lot of work to raise me, and then brother 15 years younger than me. What she did for us, I can never repay her. And I had my Aunt May in the house as well. We were a low income family, and going back to some of your previous shows, we talked about this briefly. I watched Ken Oppenheim, and he talked about, how he lived. And, I grew up very similar. I lived in a house. They called the area that I lived in Colonial Beach, they called it the swamp. When it rained, it got really, the water was everywhere, swampy area. So it really deserved the name that it had. But there was not a house on that road that had running water until, it was after I graduated from Bridgewater in '99, so it was in the 2000s. Now they have it, but when I was growing up, we didn't have it.
Wow.
So, and when you're growing up that way, and when I was in elementary school, I had issues with my speech. Now, I still do. I slur my words sometimes, and that's where I met Katie Jones and Arthur Jones. Katie Jones was a elementary teacher, reading coach. Arthur Jones ended up being my mentor in life, kept me on the right track, was my JV football coach, was my baseball coach when I was ready to give up at Bridgewater. My mom called Arthur Jones. Arthur Jones called me. Arthur Jones came to Bridgewater, made sure that I stayed and stuck it out. That freshman year it can be a monster.
Yes,
it brings reality to you. But, growing up, there was times where, you're ashamed of where you're from. But as I got older, and, to me, it was a blessing. Because my mom made sure that I never needed anything. Everything I needed, she made a way. The things I wanted, I didn't always get that, but it made me appreciate the things that she did, that she was able to give for me. People think that, when you deal with a father that's dealing with alcohol and is not always in your life, and when he's in your life, it's not always positive. People think that I have this hate for him. I love my dad, because without my dad, I wouldn't be here. And I understand the struggle that he went through. He passed away in 2004. And what I tell people, and people don't believe, they think I'm crazy when I say this. I always say, my dad died twice in my life. So in 2001, I came home, and my first wife was there. She was crying, and I was like, man, what's going on? And she was like, Rudy, that was my dad's name. She said, Rudy's died. So I called my mom, like, what happened to Rudy? And he was stabbed in Maryland. And his friend that was with him, Uncle Leonard, I called him Uncle Leonard. He really wasn't my uncle. He was my dad's best friend. Called my mom, and there was so much blood. He said there's no way that my dad was going to make it. So he told my mom that she died. So at 4 o'clock, I thought my dad had died.
What?
And so at around 9 o'clock that night, I got a call from my mom, and she said, Rudy made it. He's in the hospital. Here's the number. And so for 2 weeks, I talked to my dad every day on the phone. And we were going to, try to rekindle and make up time. And 2 weeks later, Dick, he walked out the hospital. And that was the last time that I talked to my dad. And my sister, which is a funny story we'll get to, called and let me know in 2004 that my dad had passed away. And he was found in a car. We believe it was a heart issue, but he lived a rough life, and it could have been anything. But back to my childhood, I didn't know I had 2 sisters until they showed up to my high school graduation. They came with my dad to graduation, and I met them, Vicki and Kara. And so we talk now, probably not as often as we should, but it's tough when you didn't know someone.
Yeah.
But but without my dad, I wouldn't have 2 beautiful sisters and nieces and nephews. and my brother, who I said is 15 years younger than me, but he's also my dad's son as well. So.
Wow, did not know that, man. You know, and that's just another example of, you know, we see someone's title, their role now. Just like you watch a football game, you see the game, but you don't see the work that goes behind the different challenges in which a person, coach, player, or even a cheerleader or anybody goes through to get to that point of success. And everyone faces adversity. We might not know about it. You mentioned high school and varsity and JV. There are a lot of people like myself who know you played sports, but then there are a lot of people who know you as Dr. Newman, and you work in the administrative offices and you make decisions and you help the school system run efficiently along with your staff. Let's talk about your athletic career, because again, you know, you were a good athlete. You were a multi-sport athlete, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, back in the day before kids didn't specialize.
Right. I wish we could get back to those days. Because some of these kids, you know, they think they're football players, they think they're basketball players, and they put all their hope into this one basket, when really they could probably be an excellent baseball player or something in another sport. You know, we had talked before. I was a football player and a baseball player. But what people don't know, I was a better baseball player than I was a football player.
Wow.
And but I couldn't stop hurting my shoulder as a pitcher, so I had to give it up my senior year. Now, we talked about this story. My first varsity start in '93 as a sophomore, it was against Osborne High School on a Saturday, and we'll get into. I know we're going to get into, you know, people who have touched my life, and Coach Jones was that coach, and he was my varsity baseball coach. And so that Saturday, my mom had to work, so I had to ride to the game with Coach Jones. And we get to the game, and man, it's a dirt infield. So he was like, "Listen, I'm going to chalk the lines, and I need you to walk the infield and get the rocks out." And so I did that before the game. And Coach Jones was like 6'2", about 270. I mean, just put together from South Carolina, deep voice. And Vic, I walked the first batter. So this is my first opportunity to pitch with Coach Jones, who I've been waiting to do this since I was in Little League. And he tells Randy, who was a fraternity brother, was my catcher at the time. And he said, "Randy, he don't want to pitch today." He looked to one of our other pitchers and said, "Go warm up." And I looked, kids in the dugout. So Randy comes out and was like, "Don't worry about him. You're going to be all right." And then again, I went on and I one-hit Osborne that Saturday. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, and so I wanted to, if I could have, I would have played both sports at Bridgewater. But I ended up just playing football.
Yeah, it's tough. Talk about your football career. Now, were you a quarterback in high school?
I was a quarterback. I had never played a defensive snap in my life. I've only played offense. There was one time I just happened to be by the coach, and we only had 10 people out for a kickoff, and he put me out there. And so I run down the field on the kickoff, and man, I got hit so hard. I was like, I never want to do this again. I just want to stay, take the snap and just play offense. Defense was not for me. But I went to, I'm from Colonial Beach, but I went to Washington and Lee High
Oh,
School.
okay.
And Washington Lee is I call it a single A power. They're always in the playoffs. They're always competitive. The years that I was there, which again, it goes back to this small world, I played against some of your teammates. One that was on one of your episodes, Mr. Washington himself.
Oh, Todd Washington.
Yeah.
Todd Washington.
Now, I want to say it was Tyrone Edmonds, but I may be saying his name wrong, from Sussex Central.
Tyron Edmonds.
Yeah.
Tyron.
So we played them, and we just could never even come close to them. So at that time, we were, I would say, a second tier, and you had the Sussex and the Lunenburgs that were.
Lunenburg.
Yeah, and they were the top tier single A schools at that time in our Region A, Region B area. I told you the story. He caught a pass, Mr. Edmonds. I'll just call him Mr. Edmonds for this. He was the same pass, and I'll never forget our senior year, and he caught it on the left seam, and could have walked into the end zone. And he veered right, ran over our corner, and scored a touchdown.
He ran over there on purpose.
He ran over there on purpose and ran him over. But I got a chance to talk to him after the game. And then, fast forward, so it was at Bridgewater, and we were going to play Emory Henry, and we stopped to do our walkthrough at Lane Stadium. And you guys had just finished practice, and we were all in the locker. We ended up in the locker room together. And I saw him, and we started talking. We laughed about that moment. He was such a great guy. I mean, I hope I don't get him in trouble. Man, he was giving us all kinds of gloves and.
They can't do nothing about it now. That was during the Beamer era. What year was that?
That was in 96. I got there in 95.
So I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, if you had met me then, I would have really showed you love. I would have took care of all y'all.
Right.
But in 96, I was probably out. Ready to go home, tired.
and then we played Nandua against. Now my sophomore year, both brothers were there.
Todd and TJ Washington.
Yeah. And we played them in the playoffs and eliminated them, of course. And so that was the sophomore year. We had back then you had to actually earn your place in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think we were 8-2, 7-3, and we packed up after that last game. It was over. The next year we made Nandua our homecoming game. Four touchdown passes later, we sent Mr. Washington and Nandua back on the bus and down. But again, very nice guys. Just to tell you about my speed in high school. He ran me down on an option play.
Who did? Todd?
Big Todd Washington ran me down.
Well, Todd was an athlete.
Yeah. And helped me up. So he's a nice guy. He put me down and helped me up all at the same time.
Well, Todd was my roommate. We grew up together because my dad, when he was he's still in the ministry, when he was preaching on the Eastern Shore, it was a town called Onancock, and that's when I met Todd and TJ. And on the Eastern Shore, I was younger, elementary school, middle school. That's when I learned about scrapple, which is a very unique meat.
Yes,
and homemade vanilla ice cream. And them country boys, man, they were naturally strong, man. But Todd is now coaching. He's been on one of my spotlights. He's now coaching with the New York Jets and was drafted in the 3rd or 4th round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he's a great father, great man. TJ, shout out to him. Great father as well. He had an NFL career and a great tech career at Tech. You talk about Bridgewater. When you were playing quarterback in high school, I've had so many guests on my show, and it's amazing, whether it's Michael Vick or someone like yourself or female athletes I've had on here, or even people that work in a different profession as clinicians. You never realize your journey or where you're going until later on as it starts to come together. Like nobody I've interviewed, and I've interviewed some phenomenal people, they were in the moment. It was never about, I got to get offers, I got to go to the league. That was a goal, but they were enjoying their time in high school as a student and as a student athlete. Was that the same sentiment for you? Were you just in the moment, happy to be playing high school football?
Vic, I was 150 pounds in high school. So I knew NFL was not for me. But as I tell our students that they're so stuck on, I have to go to Tech. I got to go to that school in Charlottesville. the JMUs, and I said, where are you going to go and play? You have to make a decision. Do you want to go and say, yes, I was a member of Virginia Tech's football team? Or do you want to go and say, I went to Bridgewater and I played 3 of my 4 years? And here are my memories from those games. I love talking about the things that happened during the game, not something that I didn't watch Dwight Vick and Derek Smith blow up the left side of the line. I want to say I was out there with Dwight and Derek doing those things. So you got to go out and find somewhere where you can play and enjoy those 4 years, and you never know what's going to happen. We had at Bridgewater, we had a running back, Cruz, who ended up playing for the Baltimore Ravens. Since had passed away in I believe it was a car accident. You had Jane Taylor, who was a linebacker from Bridgewater, played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Green Bay. And there was a receiver, and this was way after me, that went to Steelers, was on the Steelers practice squad for a couple of years. Vaughn Lewis, who was with me, got some looks as a punter. He was a wide receiver and a punter, but he was getting looks. He had a leg on him. He was also a high jumper in track. But if you're good, they will find you. That's what those scouts are paid for. You can't get stuck in the name. So for me, it was who's going to allow me to play, and not just allow me to play quarterback. Those only things I was looking for. And I had to be in driving distance because my mom and I are so close. I had to be able to say, you know what, if something happens, I need to be able to get in my car and drive to Colonial Beach to see my mom.
Absolutely. Dr. Newman, were there other schools? Bridgewater obviously was a great choice. You had a great time and a great career, but were there, University of Richmond's, JMU's, or?
There was, it's UVA-wise now, but it was Prince Valley back then. They were there. The Randolph-Macons were there. There was a school that will remain nameless that came in that was a little higher level. They came in and they saw my size, and literally the coach said, "You look bigger on film."
Oh.
And that was really the extent of that conversation. And so that is what it is. But
size then, now, and even before then, will always play a factor in sports, football, basketball, with the exception of sports like tennis or track or whatever. But was Bridgewater, so you get to Bridgewater, was it the experience you were hoping for? Because I don't know, it's interesting. I love doing these spotlights, talking about people's journey, because you think you know someone, or you think you know about a university or an environment or a culture, and you learn as I'm interviewing. I didn't know much about Bridgewater, except sometimes their coaches would come up to Virginia Tech for coaching clinics and camps. And then, they would watch us practice, University of Richmond would do that, JMU. How was Bridgewater? And if I was a student at Osborne, would you recommend them exploring playing sports or even attending Bridgewater?
Yeah, we have a kid there now from Bridgewater, Sean.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Osborne, and yes, I tried to push a couple others this year that way. And I'll tell you this, Vic, my 4 years, I really didn't appreciate them until I was 30-something years old. I went through a period where I didn't want anything to do with Bridgewater.
Really?
Because of my experience, and again, everyone's perspective is their reality. My perspective during that time was I wasn't being treated fairly. And now that I've had an opportunity to mature and to think back on it, I caused a lot of that with my attitude towards the game.
So we're talking, Dr. Newman Homer, we're talking about treated fairly, your perspective, we're talking not about academics or anything racial on campus.
No.
We're talking about athletics.
Athletics, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we went through several offensive coordinators during my time there. And the last one was there. We did not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And again, as you get older, you know, my whole thing was Coach Clark, who I love now, and I would do anything for Michael Clark, whether that's helping him with a student, going back and watching his ceremony when I was the only player at his ceremony that when his name was put on the coach's corner. What he doesn't know, I still have the letters that he wrote me, handwritten notes, inspiring me through the 4 years to get through the tough times and to come back and just to, you know, be a part of that Bridgewater family. And you know, when you're young, you don't see it. You know, my thing was like, why is Coach Clark letting this happen to me? And you know, he told me this was going to be all right. And you know, it happened, and it made me a better person.
It sounds like, you know, and you and I both work with youth, and I'm just not talking about Manassas City kids because you've had jobs before. Hearing you talk about that struggle and that adversity, and thinking about, you know, guys like Michael Vick and, you know, Roniel Whitaker, and even women who, you know, play sports, you know, April Bird, who played basketball, or Lisa Witherspoon, who is in the Virginia Tech Hall of Fame. Everybody I talked to, from Damon Baker, who played basketball at the University of Alabama, talks about the rocky transition from high school to college, and even post-college into corporate America, where they were done playing. And now we have this new generation, and not to target to pick on them, because you both you and I are in this field to uplift and empower them. But now, you know, when they don't like something, everybody, and I preface, a lot of kids will leave Osborne and go to another school, or they'll go here because his coach ain't showing love. And then they get on Snapchat and they Instagram and they add to their story in their own way, and they talk about being slighted. The advice I give them is basically what you just said in that last answer, is to embrace the struggle, rise above it, and there's a life lesson that you still value today. Is that correct?
That is correct. You know, Coach Clark is he's a spiritual guy. You know, he's the only coach I've ever had in my life that his pregame speech was directly relevant to a scripture. He would read a scripture to us and go over it by how football could be in that story. And I think we talked about this. A lot of what happened at Bridgewater and the success that they have has a connection to Virginia Tech. So Coach Clark was a linebacker coach at Murray State. They had a defensive end there by the name of Bud Foster.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yes. They had an All-American safety in corner. He made All-American at both positions. Ralph Robinson came with Coach Clark and was at Bridgewater. And they turned it around. And a lot of the things that we did at Bridgewater, if I would go to a Virginia Tech practice, I would hear those same things. From pride and joy.
Yep.
All of those things were there, and it was all about the system. And when my class arrived at Bridgewater had the longest losing streak in college football, any level, at the time. And that streak was broken with a 7-7 tie at Davidson in North Carolina. And then the next year, we won the first two or three games. So we really broke it the next year. And we went 5-5 that year.
Mm-hmm.
Then we won some games junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And then that freshman class came in that went to the Stag Bowl. And a lot of them played my senior year. And we were 0-10. So we started off 9-1, 5-5, 3-7, 0-10, and then 2 years after that, Stag Bowl, playing Mount Union.
Yeah, 0-10 is rough.
Yeah.
And then and again, you didn't quit, you didn't transfer, right?
No.
When you talk about sports, and you talked about people that influence you, a few so far, I know there's a few others, and your mother's hard work and dedication. Who else did you admire? You and I are from that same era in sports, whether it be football, baseball, or basketball. And I know, you've had conversations with Derek, and you and I have talked, and I know the other people you talk with. When you sit back during your era, who did you watch, whether it was a peer or someone you watched on television, pro-wise, professionally, or collegiately, you were like, hey, like this guy can go, especially, for you being a quarterback, and even in basketball, baseball, who comes to mind when you think about, oh, I'm definitely going to watch him or her? It could be a her as well.
So I was a Randall Cunningham fan.
Okay,
I wore number 12.
Back in the day.
Yes, I wore number 12. I wanted to be like, I couldn't run like Randall, but that's what I wanted to be. And at the college level, I was always a Syracuse fan. And it was because of the McPhersons, the Marvin Grayes, and then on to, Donovan and R.J. Anderson past that, because they always gave the African-American quarterback the opportunity. And I was able to see someone out there that looked like me, and that motivated me. Then I went and got this degree from Tech, so they kind of split my loyalty up a little bit. But Randall, there, any quarterback at the time from Syracuse when I was growing up. As far as who I looked up to, as far as my peer, was Jeffrey Mcdowell. He was a little older than me. He was the all-time leading basketball scorer at Washington and Lee. His son, going fast forward in full circle here, his son is T.T. Carey. T.T. Carey played at Colonial Beach and is the all-time leading scorer in Colonial Beach history. And then his senior year, I can't remember if he passed Iverson for the single season point scored, but he was up there with them and led the team to the state championship in 2009.
I know he definitely was up there. I think the kid that did that was the kid
Mac.
that went to Georgetown.
Yeah.
Transferring. Played out in Gate City.
Yeah. Mac passed it, but TT was up there.
Yeah, he was.
He got it.
It is crazy how that goes full circle. Yeah. So now you get to Bridgewater, you have a great time as far as you had a great career, but you didn't appreciate it till later, right? Two years later when you were in your 30s. Yeah. But nonetheless, you did graduate with a degree, right?
Yes, I did. I did.
Okay. And then what was next? Because football is a sport where it hits you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can play overseas in the basketball, you can play in the G League, track, you can, run in adult leagues and things like that, or coach it, stay close to it, or just go, you can get up and say, I'm going to get some laps in. But football, other than flag, or if you want to risk it, play semi-pro like I did one year, which was like the longest yard. It's difficult. It's an abrupt ending. It ends abruptly. But you did get your degree, and you did have a plan. What happened after that? What was the next phase of your life then?
The next phase of my life, I did a little subbing, trying to find it. At that time, it was hard to get a health and PE job. All the coaches took those jobs, and they ain't leave.
Mm-hmm.
So when you found one, and this is when my story gets, it's complicated and a blessing all wrapped up into one.
Okay.
And I tell you, I am truly blessed, Vic, and it just seemed like things happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to get discouraged. All my friends, they're teaching and working, and I'm just trying to find my way. And so I get online, and I see that there's a teaching opening at Chatham High School. I'm from Colonial Beach. I went to Bridgewater.
Mm-hmm.
And between those two, the only places I really ever went, except for where we played games. Had no idea where Chatham High School was at. So I called, got a return call from Mr. Scarborough, the principal. The teacher there had cancer.
Mm.
And they were looking for a mid-year replacement. I interview, I get the job, and my first coaching job was at Chatham as a girls softball coach. I did that spring, and then the next year I started my football coaching at Chatham. And so I was a quarterback coach and a DB coach. But I did the best I could with the DBs, made a lot of phone calls about drills because that was not my side of the ball. But it was that break when and I was ready to give up, and and you pray and you say, God, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I need to start thinking about something else, and it's happened for me. And so during my time at Bridgewater, I met two people that I would consider my friends, but also mentors, and that's the head coach now at Hampton, Robert Prunty, and he was at Gretna at the time. We had a weightlifting competition. He didn't know me, Vic. He just knew I was a coach over there at Chatham. Pulled me to the side, started asking me questions about what I wanted to do in my life, and talked about how I needed to make a plan. He gave me his phone number that day. We talked, and when he left Gretna to go to Hargrave, he didn't leave me behind. He was always inviting me over, talking football, talking life with me, inviting me over to his house. And during that connection, I met Kevin Keith, who is now, he was at Hargrave basketball coach at the time. Now he's NC State's head coach.
Yeah, I was okay.
And so when I went through my divorce, those guys, Robert Prunty and Kevin Keith, would invite me to their house and just, led me down a path where I could see the light, that this wasn't the end. Yes, it was a bad time because I went through a divorce, Vic. My father died, really died, and I lost my coaching job.
Oh, wow.
All in the same year.
So the coaching job as well?
Yes. And so what happened with the coaching job was after I left Chatham, I became the head football coach at Laurel Park High School. And before I took that job, another principal had called me and said, hey, don't accept this job. I'm going to recommend you for my position if my number one is not approved. He said, hang tight, because there was no guarantee that his person was going to be approved, and he didn't. He was not approved. And I couldn't wait. I wanted to be a head coach. That was my thing, and I took the job. And what he told me was going to happen, happened. He said they're going to consolidate at the end of the year. But when I'm going through the process, I hear him, but I'm not hearing him, because I'm so focused, Vic, on I want to be a head football coach. And I took the job. And I would not change that experience for anything, but it brought me closer to my spiritual side because I got away. I lost my focus. Everything was about football. And you got to have balance in your life.
Yes.
And if you don't do it yourself, he will. And so, I ended up going home through all of this, talking to my mom, refocused. And at the time, I'm going through a custody battle with my daughter. And I said, man, I'm getting out of coaching. I'm hurt right now. The thing that I poured all my heart into was taken away from me, not because I did a bad job, not because I did something, to a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It was school consolidated. Now, just out of my, and so I said, what do you want to do in your life? And so when I went to Lower Park High School, they did not have a health and PE job. So I had to become a special education teacher, which will go into my career. So at that time, we were in the back hallway. That's where my classroom was at. Some things you can't do today.
Yeah.
You can't do that today.
No.
And no one knew that they were doing anything wrong back then. That was just the way.
That's the way it was.
Just the way it was.
Yep.
And so I watched my kids struggle. And special education became my passion. So I was like, well, what can I do? Because I'm getting out of coaching. I'm done with coaching. It's going to cost me everything. And I go back to Coach Prunty. He's like, come hang out with me at Hargrave. You can get your football fix there. And so I went and got my admin degree. And this is what I did. Vic, just like I used to be, I want to say ashamed, but used to feel bad about where I came from with the circumstances. So when you're trying to go through a custody battle and teach and make a living, you do what you have to do. I got my master's online. And people who don't know anything about online education will tell me that I didn't get a good education. That I bought a degree, is what they were telling me.
I don't know where they got that from.
Right.
I got mine online too.
And so I did that because I had to. I know where I wanted to go. In order for me to get there, I had to have this degree. And I did what I had to do to get the degree and take care of my daughter. So now I don't listen to those people, but they did give me motivation. So we had a combine at Hargrave. I go there, I'm taking weight on the scale. And Louise Usual is the principal of Reedsville Middle School. Now again, I told you, I've been very blessed and fortunate with how I've moved up the ladder in this profession. I'm just taking weight. Miss Usual brought 3 or 4 kids from Reedsville who are football power in North Carolina. I think they're up to 21 state championships, the most in North Carolina history.
Goodness.
Is there, and she's giving me a hard time, like, oh, you're really working hard. And so I figured out who she was by talking to one of the players. And I said, yeah, I said, I'd work really hard if you would give me a job. What I didn't know, Vic, again, perfect timing for me, awful for the gentleman. Her assistant principal had cancer.
Oh.
Yes. And so she had an opening. Now tell me God ain't good, Vic. She had an opening. I didn't know this. And so we talked, exchanged numbers. I interviewed for the position. Nervous as could be. Probably didn't deserve a second interview because I was that nervous. But there was something in her that she felt about me. She gave me a second chance. I went back to the second interview. I was ready. You know, it was fourth quarter. It was time to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the job. And the things that she did for me to prep me to become a principal. So I was her assistant principal for 1 year. And I get a call from back home to say, hey, our elementary school needs a principal. And like, well, they're not going to hire me because I just finished 1 year of assistant principal. I go down, I go to the interview, and long story short, because I know we got time limit here, 3 interviews later, I become the principal of Colonial Beach Elementary School. Colonial Beach Elementary School at the time was in school improvement. And so by the time we finished, because I had a great team, I mean, a great team, and we had great students, we became a Governor's School of Excellence.
Wow.
In that 5-year stretch. So then I left there and I went to King George Middle School as their principal. Enjoyed my time. At this time, I think that before I left Colonial Beach, they had a new superintendent, Donna Power, who went to Tech, got her doctorate through Tech. She sent me to the Aspiring Superintendents Institute, and it was at the Hotel Roanoke, but it was through Virginia Tech. I go through this program, I meet Dr. Harris, who is a Virginia Tech professor. He said, if you want to be a superintendent, you better go get your doctorate. He came back, we had 4 sessions, 4 different weekends that we had to go to Roanoke. The last time we were there, he says, here's the information. You need to go apply for the doctorate program at Tech. So I apply for it. I get in. I get through the program. And so I'm at King George at the time, and we were hosting the walk at the middle school, and some of the Colonial Beach School Board members were there. And they said, hey, we have a superintendent opening. And I'm just there at the event, Vic. I'm just there because it was at my school. I was like, oh man, you know, I'm not finished. I haven't defended yet. They said, don't worry about it. I go, I interview, I get that job. And instead of the elementary school just being in school improvement, now both schools are in school improvement. So we get in there and, again, put a great team together, got both of them out of school improvement. And at that time, my daughter was a senior at King George, and my son was getting ready to go into kindergarten. So I told my wife, I said, if we're ever going to move, and she's from Pennsylvania, I said, we're ever going to move, we got to do it now, because, you know, Kyra's getting ready to become a freshman in college, and, you know, I want Aiden to be able to go to a kindergarten and be able to stay there with his friends. I don't want him to moving back and forth. Mm-hmm. So Manassas City comes open, and my mentor, Jeff Smith, who is the superintendent for Hampton, our grandmothers are cousins.
Hampton City Schools?
Hampton City Schools.
Yeah, my neck of the woods.
Jeff Smith, yes.
Yeah, my district.
He is my mentor. He's a Washington and Lee graduate. We grew up 10 minutes apart. You know, I couldn't find a better mentor than Jeff Smith. And he said, this is the one for you. There were other jobs open. He said, but this is the one for you. I was like, okay. Nick, I used to tell people I would never work in Northern Virginia because I didn't like the traffic. So he said, no, he said, you need to get over that. You need to go and interview.
Yeah,
And
it's funny.
interviewed and got the job.
You know, it's funny because I said I would never live up here. I was a Tidewater guy, 757 all the way. But the job market, more importantly, God led me up here. My wife, at the time, she was my girlfriend who I met at Tech, and then we got engaged. She grew up here. She went to Stonewall, was a standout track runner, now Unity Reed High School. Um, and you know, I just never thought I would be up here, not because of the traffic. It was so many people, but I love it up here now. I've been up here now 20 plus years, and you're up here. You're superintendent. You're now a supporter of Vicktory Life, and you're in Manassas City Schools.
Yeah.
How has that transition been for you? Because you've been at different localities. You know, Colonial Beach is different. Northern Virginia, even though you have Arlington and Alexandria in the Fairfax County part, and you have Alexandria City Public Schools, Prince William County and Fairfax, your neighboring jurisdictions, are huge.
Yeah.
And then you have Manassas City, which I've always loved to work in. I used to work at Metz in 2008, and I've been a big supporter of Osborne High School many times, speaking engagements and things like that. It's right here tucked away between Manassas Park and Prince William. What are your thoughts, and how has the transition been for you?
Well, you know, I'm an honest person, Vic, and I'll tell you, when during the transition period, it was tough for me. I was leaving what I knew, you know, from Colonial Beach, lived there, grew up there. The only time I was away is when I was at Bridgewater and when I was living in Danville, teaching at Chatham, Lower Park, and then at Reedsville Middle School. So I was home, I was comfortable. I was near my mom, which was very important to me. And then I came here and I met Chairman Williams. And I was like, man, I really believe in his vision on what he wanted to see Manassas City become as a school division. And I said, I'm all in. And then I had a meeting with my predecessor. We got this thing called Let's Talk. And at the time, we have since changed it. You can submit anonymous posts on there. And she said, I don't know if I should show you this, but I think you should know. And it was after I was approved, there was a handful of anonymous things, none of them had their name on it, about why Manassas City should not, they had made a mistake by selecting me for this position. One of them, I showed this to, I had a conversation with Rocky Carter, our basketball coach.
My guy, that's my guy.
And so I was telling him about the rough start for me. And this is the first time, besides me having this conversation with Rocky and my family, that I'm telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
There was one that even said, you hired a guy with an online master's degree. Now, they didn't say anything about what I accomplished at Bridgewater as a student athlete. They were stuck on Phoenix and forgot that my last degree was from the Virginia Tech. And I can't believe it. But they didn't put their name on it. And I drove home that day and I think I was crushed because I was excited. I mean, I was driving up here, wanting to meet everybody. I mean, I was ready to go, and I was like, oh my God, this is what they think of me. And so whenever I get in that place, I call Mama. And I call my mom. I said, this is what happened. And she said, what are you going to do? So what are you going to do? You can always call Colonial Beach, and they'll take you back. They hadn't hired anybody yet. She said, or you can go and show this person, whoever it is, you don't know who it is because it's anonymous, that Manassas City made the right choice. And one thing my mom always tell me, and I say this at every graduation speech, anytime I'm in front of kids, you always have to protect the first gift you were ever given in life, and that's your name. And my mom told me, she said, you go there and you show them what Kevin Newman can do, and be true to yourself. And that's what I've done since I've been here. I'm going to care about kids because they're my number one priority. I'm going to do the best I can to ensure that the staff of Manassas City has what they need for what I can control. And I'm always going to treat any and everyone with respect. You know, Coach Clark used to always say, everyone has a story on why they're Division III. And you can take that and turn that into real life. Everyone has a story. Before I told you my story, you never knew that you were talking to a poor kid that lived in a house with no running water, that struggled with his speech. Now he has a doctorate degree from the best university in the Commonwealth. And now I'm a two-time superintendent.
Well, you're right. You're right, Dr. Newman. And what I find interesting is I've been living in Northern Virginia since 2000. I've lived in Fairfax County and Prince William, the Manassas part of Prince William County. And I've worked in a lot of different places. And I have a very reputable reputation, and I'm very well connected throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. I find it funny and disturbing, but at the same time, it comes with the territory. Because for me in 2008, when I was hired, I was the first TDT specialist hired at Metz Middle School, myself and a lady named Donalda Harding. We were working for Crossroads Counseling. And I remember coming in, and I was coaching high school football at Parkview High School, and it was 2008. Maxine Griggs, also known now as Maxine Taylor.
I call her my auntie.
She pulled me in, and she began to mentor me. And she said, I just want you to know that you've made people uncomfortable here. I said, who? She said, just a handful of people. I said, what? I'm sitting here dumbfounded, like, you know, how you look around like, what did I do? You heard something? She said, well, you are related to Michael Vick. And there are people here who find him, you know, they just didn't like him for obvious reasons. And she said, so there are going to be people watching your every move. But I felt what you felt. And I know that feeling when you're targeted and it comes from the blind side. But the adversity, I embraced it, and I picked myself up, and I met some great people there. My guy, Natowski,
Yeah.
Dr. Saunders was the principal there back then, and Officer Jordan, and some great teachers, Gail Schumann, and people who I still love to this day. And I'm glad I stuck it out that year, ended up moving on to focus on my master's degree, but it was a great time there. So I understand, and I'm glad you stuck it out. I think that comes with the territory when you take on a path of leadership like you have. And everyone has an excuse or a reason or a complaint, but very few people have a solution. You are solution focused, and we've had conversations. I do want to ask you, and I know you can't dive into so much because of logistics and the fact that everything's on an ongoing evaluation. Superintendents like yourself have been faced with the challenge of COVID-19, virtual learning, the new normal. It's been a challenge across the country, and especially here in Virginia, the great state of Virginia, where we've had to adjust on the fly and prepare. What have you been doing to make sure that the students of Manassas City continue to get a quality education, feel safe, supported, and know what the expectations are this school year?
And before I answer that, Vic, can I go back to one thing? I just want to say
Absolutely, absolutely.
Those handful of people, those handful of anonymous people, and maybe I'm wrong, are the minority.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I have met nothing but caring, loving people in Manassas that have embraced me in all of my uniqueness. Because, you know, I'm the trash talker when it comes to sports and everything. They know I love kids. They know I'm going to be out in buildings. I mean, this is parents, community, people, councilmen and women. I love Manassas. Just signed a new contract last year. I want this to be my retirement division. I'm not looking to leave. You know, I've already received phone calls from people in our community wanting to know if I was interested in another division that has an opening coming up next year. I'm not even applying for that. I am so happy with what we have here, the direction that we're going, and the people that I work with. Nobody works for me in Manassas City. We work together to do what's right for kids. And which takes me into your question about how are we doing things for our kids during these unprecedented times. It was a team effort. You know, I know our parents, our staff, they were tired of answering all the surveys, but we read every one of them. Dave Lyon read every one of those surveys and, you know, put things in different places. So when I had a chance to look at it, I can say, okay, we have this % of our parents who are looking for this. Here's our staff, they were looking for this. Our students are looking for this. And we had to find a way to, you know, bring it together. You know, Dr. Saunders, who you mentioned, we got Dr. Brent here that we just stole from Fairfax, who has spent some time in Prince William, you know, Andy Hoffman, the whole team. It was a team effort. We have the best administrators that you can find. If you would watch our teachers, now I'll get to the students in a minute. When we went into this virtual learning, you know, you hear comments like, oh, the teachers just want to do this virtual thing. They don't want to come to school. They are working harder now to get this done. I've talked to more teachers that are in tears because of how hard this is. And sometimes as a leader, you don't have a suggestion. You just have to listen and let them know whatever it is, we're going to do this thing together. We're going to get through this together. Our students are participating, they're online. Make no mistake about it. Virtual learning is not even close to what in-person instruction would be like and the benefit of that. But we have to do what's right for the safety of our kids and the safety of our staff. Our staff has families. So we don't put them in jeopardy either.
Absolutely.
You know, it was a tough decision by the board. It was the first split vote that we've had in my third year as a board. And I'm not going to say anyone was wrong because everything was wrong. Every option was wrong. And that's just being honest. Virtual is not the 100% answer to this thing. In person definitely is not the right answer. A hybrid mix, maybe, but you know, there's flaws to that too. Everything was flawed. But as I was talking to Chairman Williams, he said, well, how are things going? And I said, Chairman Williams, nothing's perfect except for the perfect effort that I've seen. If you would look at the number of parents that signed up for our Parent Academy and Remind and different apps that they can communicate with teachers, you'd be amazed. There's over 7,000 of them, parents.
Wow.
Yes. Our kids are logging in, participating, and staff coming to work every day, whether they're in the building or not, then they're working. We're going to get through this. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough on everybody. Nothing is the same since March 13th. But we have to do it together. I will put our plan and the effort and the outcomes that we've seen so far against anyone. Now, I'm a competitive person. I got in trouble for it my first day to school because I said that we're going to make sure Manassas City is #1. And then the article came out that said that, you know, new superintendent said he's going to beat Prince William in everything. Yes. You know, a 15-second slip up of words turned into an article. So I had to learn the Northern Virginia press is a little
Oh,
different than Colonial Beach.
oh, yeah. Oh yeah, no question, no question. It's funny you said that though, because I want you to elaborate a little bit without giving away too much, because I know you have things you can elaborate on as far as your future plans. But because respectfully, things have to be approved. You just can't go announcing stuff. But I know you're a man of passion. You are competitive, and you have a vision. You wouldn't be sitting here doing the things you've done so far and what you plan to do without that mindset. What is your vision? Because you say you want to remain here. This is your home, and you made a good home of it. You want to retire here. With that being said, that means you're invested in your community. When I let everybody know this interview was going to take place, your Legacy Spotlight, ADs from county schools and other people in Manassas City came on my page and was already excited about it. Why don't you share with everybody watching this interview, man, without giving away too much, Dr. Newman, what is your vision and what do you see when, years from now, Manassas City schools will be what? Manassas City Public Schools will be what?
Manassas City Public Schools will be respected in years to come. And it will be because of the work that our staff is putting in and the things that our students are accomplishing. See, I had a big debate with some community members about sending our kids to TJ in Fairfax.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have what I consider one of the best governor school options with our partnership with Mason. And what I asked that individual was, tell me a school that kids are getting in at TJ that I can't go look on the wall at Osborne that our kids are actually getting accepted to. You can't come up with one. Our kids are accomplishing so much, but for some reason we have to overcome negative stigmas from the past. So my vision, my goal is to, one, highlight all the great things that our kids and our staff are accomplishing, because we're accomplishing a lot. Are we perfect? No. Are we where I want to be? No. We need to increase our offerings for our high school kids to put them on a path that is not just a college-driven path, because that's not for everyone. I don't want our kids. I'll be paying college loans until I'm in the ground, probably, between those 3 degrees. So, and some of them don't need to do that. They need to go out, but as I tell them, I mentor kids at Osborne in Mets. I do, myself. And what I tell them is, find your path, but when you get there, don't just go there to be a worker. Put yourself in a position that you can be the boss.
Yes, sir.
And that's what I want to do for Manassas City. Keep putting our kids in position to be successful.
Yeah, the label thing is so interesting to me because I'm from Hampton and Newport News, the Tyrwood area. And I lived a long time in Hampton, but prior to, I lived in Newport News, neighboring cities. And, when I got to Virginia Tech, it was people from all over the country, Africa, up north. But it's Virginia Tech, so a lot of Virginia people were there. And labels are so ignorant. We spend so much time, oh, you're from Northern Virginia, and you have money, and then people look down on Tidewater, Richmond and Tidewater, people look down on Northern Virginia. Then you get to Northern Virginia, and then Manassas and Woodbridge go at it, and then Manassas City and the county go at it, and then Fairfax looks down on Prince William. I'm not saying they all do. I'm just saying those are the misconceptions and stereotypes. But when it comes down to it, the ultimate goal for people like yourself and I, and even your team, the Dr. Saunders, the Coach Carters, the Coach Cortez, all the administrators, the Gail Schumans, all the great people that make Manassas City a great community, they care about the kids. And I will say one of the reasons, I'm not going to lie either, I'm very honest, is I wanted to do this Legacy Spotlight because I've grown to admire and respect you immensely. But also, I've done 10 plus years of work in Manassas City. And I met the same great people you have, people who still show me love when I'm out at Osborne Park games or fundraisers, or just stopping by Giant, to get some snacks for my groups. The community is a wonderful community. I don't get some of that stuff, but like you said earlier, Dr. Newman, it's really a small contingency of people. And I tend to focus, like yourself, on the people who get it and who care. Just have really a couple more things, really one more thing. We're at the part of the show where, as we wrap up, I want you talked about your vision for Manassas City Schools. You talked about your journey as a student athlete, becoming a man, how God has guided you and gave you direction. You are very blessed. You even have your wife, right? And your two children. What are the names of your wife and two children?
My wife is Angela, my daughter's Kyra, and my son is Kevin, but we call him Aiden.
Okay, all right. And your wife, what does she do for a living?
My wife is a case manager for adults with disabilities.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
And so, just watching her and her work and what she's doing. I hate calling them clients, but I guess that's they're
the professional term. Yeah,
right.
I know what you mean.
But she cares for them, and she gets those calls in the middle of the night, and sometimes she has to leave in the middle of the night and go and make sure that their living situation is right for them, and she cares a lot about that. My daughter is a junior now at Mary Washington. She was a psychology major, and she just changed to accounting.
Wow.
Yeah. And little Aiden is in second grade now. He's all boy. He's playing baseball. I had his game tonight before I came here to talk with you. And he's so happy. Like he's happy here. And that's one thing when people say, well, how do you know you don't want to go to these other places? Because I see the smile on my son's face when he comes from Hayden. And he tells me about his friends, and he tells me about his teachers. And even on Zoom, he'll tell me, hey, I saw so-and-so today in class. Or watching him run around the bases today. And he has so many opportunities here in Manassas that we didn't have in Colonial Beach. And I love Colonial Beach. Just like, you pound your chest about 757, I do the same about Colonial Beach. I've embraced where I came from and appreciate it. And I tell everybody, when they say, where are you from? I don't say I'm from, a little place near Fredericksburg or near, I'm from Colonial Beach.
That's right.
To be more specific, I'm from the swamp. and people that know Colonial Beach know exactly where that's at. And I say it with pride because the people from where I'm from made me who I am today, the work ethic, because nothing was given to any of us. And a lot of people can say that, but I'm just speaking on my experience.
Mm-hmm.
My mom taught me how to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
You may not, have some of the things that others have to put them in a position, but you can always work hard. And they can't take that from you. They can say a lot of things about Kevin Newman. They cannot say Kevin Newman does not work hard.
No doubt.
And I got that from Margaret Ann Newman.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing that. And I want you to take that same energy. And this is the part of my show where I let my guests, this is the last point you get a chance to make, and we're done. I want you to give your final thoughts on your legacy. You talked about your spirituality, your faith, your vision for Manassas City Schools, and also your passion for helping youth and the admiration you have for people, your colleagues, your team. You give credit, you're humble. What advice would you give to a young Kevin Newman right now in Manassas City who is growing up, dealing with a few things, and they're trying to find their way and they're close to giving up? What would you say to them? They're in Point of Woods right now, or they're walking around. I don't care the location. You're talking to them, they're in your office, or they're watching this on our YouTube channel. What would you tell them, or any child, young man or woman, what would you tell them to do as far as to keep aspiring and to stay the course? What would your feedback be?
The first thing I would tell them is something I said a little earlier, to protect that first gift, protect that name of yours. Because that regardless of how much money you make in your life, when this thing's over, the only thing you have is what people say about you. And if you're doing things right and you're protecting your name, they have to say good things about you. And that's your legacy. Your name is your legacy. Never give up. Don't let your circumstances determine where you think you can go. If that's the case, a lot of people that I know from where I'm from would have given up a long time ago. And the effort that you put in, the work to become the best at whatever you're doing. It's just like when you're an athlete or if you're a coach. You don't coach to be in second place. I never played to be in second place. I wanted to be first. When I became a superintendent, when I was a principal, I wanted my schools to be first. I want my division to be first. And so when I said what I said 3 years ago, I meant it. Manassas City will compete to be in the best school divisions in the Commonwealth. And it's going to come from hard work. And it doesn't matter where you're from or your circumstance. You control your work ethic. You control where you're going to go. You control your decisions in life. No one can take that from you. And I've met negative people. I've met negative people that are teachers that taught me. They were my teachers. Let me know that I wasn't going to make it anywhere. So I enjoy going back and letting them know. Oh, this guy made it. The guy that was struggling in your class because he was shy and didn't want to talk because he talked funny. Yeah, that guy made it. That guy made it. And I tell my kids that too. Regardless of what they're going through, it doesn't matter. And I think that would be it right there.
I love it, Dr. Newman, man. Well, I am honored to have you on. Once again, I thank you for jumping on, giving us that wisdom and insight, sharing your legacy, your drive, and your journey with my viewers, as well as the viewers that support you in Manassas City and beyond, because it's not just Manassas City, but you are definitely a great ambassador for that city. And I love working with you. I love hearing you speak. And this has been a great interview, man. And I look forward to continuing hearing you speak, as well as your leadership throughout Manassas City and Northern Virginia. And I'm glad that you plan to stay around. So next time we'll have a spotlight. I'm going to have you on. We can talk high school football. For those watching, we have an ongoing debate about the great Hampton High Ronald Curry teams and the
second best team in the 90s.
See, on that note, let me get ready to wrap up because he's going to say something. But again, all jokes aside, thank you, Dr. Newman. Thank you for allowing me and the Vicktory Life team to serve the students of Manassas City, specifically Osborne High School. Great kids there, great principals, great teachers, and great students. I just love the opportunity to. So thank you.
No, and thank you. The things that you're doing, the impact you're making on our kids at Osborne. One day we're going to expand this thing. I know you're one person. We're going to get you back to your home at Metz at some point. We're going to expand this thing out. I want the kids of Manassas City to be surrounded by great people with great hearts, and that's the one thing from our first conversation. We ended up in my office for over an hour.
Yeah.
And it just showed. I could talk to you, all day because our spirits are the same when it comes to what we want to see out of the youth. And giving back and becoming the Coach Joneses to those kids the way Coach Jones was to me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Newman, and thank you to all the Vicktory Life supporters. And like I say, every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you leave a positive impact and a great legacy. Thank you, Dr. Newman. Thank you, everyone watching. I appreciate it.